Hello everyone. Um I wanted to make this video um and discuss a few things about ataxia, hereditary ataxia and genetics for one, what I'm experiencing another. Um and so we all know I suspect I have a hereditary form of ataxia. And according to my genetic counselor, it seems to be like a dominant form. And there are many family members, within my family that show evidence of cerebellar atrophy, which could mean that the cerebellar degeneration or the wasting away, the shrinkage in the back of the brain, the cerebellum, which is where the cerebellum is located, is hereditary because and it seems to be a dominant. So within every generation, a family member has been affected and has to have symptoms to pass it on to their children. So that seems to be the hereditary pattern that we are running into in my family. Despite of one family member, I had a later onset Friedreich's ataxia. So yeah, he was the only one with Friedreich's ataxia. But anyways, back to mine. So we all know that, and I have the symptoms and whatever. In 2005, I was genetically tested by Athena, and at the time the results were inconclusive. It showed a variant or a mutation or whatever, but they didn't know what it meant. Okay. It could have been that it was causing my problems or not. Up to date, several years later, the genetic counselor explained to me that it was recategorized as negative after all, so therefore I was tested negative for ataxia. Based on what I figured out and my understanding, as I was put through the complete ataxia evaluation or comprehensive evaluation for ataxia by Athena. And the reason why I figured out, because the piece of paper I had that my neurologist had given me my last appointment in September showed me the variant that was found that was inconclusive, and it said Athena diagnosis complete ataxia evaluation. So I was on the phone with the dude from genetics because I'm trying to go through genetics for the second time, and he was trying to explain all this to me, but at the time it wasn't sinking in. He was trying to tell me that I was most likely tested for all the known genes at the time causing all the forms of ataxia, the known genes. And after all, it was all negative. So again, I wanted to explain that you could have cerebellar atrophy for generations, and have several family members that show this evidence and have symptoms of ataxia that appears hereditary. A negative genetic test does not prove that you do not have a hereditary ataxia. And it's not all in your head. It shows if you have the symptoms and evidence of cerebellar degeneration or other hereditary signs, that you could possibly have ataxia of hereditary. But the gene for your particular type of ataxia could not be known about or identified at the time you had the test. For other folks, it can mean that you do not have a hereditary form of ataxia, okay? So, I mean, the results does not mean the same thing for everyone. It only means, a negative genetic test only means that for your particular type of ataxia causing your problems is not known about. So it's not all in your head. And for years I felt like it was all in my head because all my brain scans, everyone said everything was normal. And in fact, I had cerebellar atrophy for so many years. I had it for about 12 years now. And just this year, I discovered I had cerebellar atrophy. Okay? And that it was looked over multiple times, and everyone kept insisting it was normal. So I found out this just this year. And I kept asking questions as to why do I have a normal cerebellum and experiencing all these symptoms, yet the rest of my family members have evidence of cerebellar atrophy. It didn't make sense to me, okay? So I was asking these questions for like a long time, and the answers just came to me out of the blue. And yeah, but that was my journey of it, and it just is taking a long time now trying to identify it's obvious I seem to have a hereditary something, but trying to identify the gene variant is we're going to try to do next. And as of 2005, it was negative, okay? But between 2005 and 2020, they could have identified and discovered more genes causing the different hereditary ataxias. So, for instance, there are so many SCAs, spinocerebellar ataxias. This is just an example. And only a selected, or at least half of them, I think I've read that before somewhere, only half of them have identified genes. So, there's a lot of people with SCA that have an unknown type because they haven't been through genetic testing. They still had the symptoms or whatever. They just can't find the particular type that they got. Because it's a type that has not been identified genetically. So, I mean, me personally, I'm not gonna say I have episodic ataxia or not, but based on my symptoms, they appear episodically, and I'm just using this as an example. But, you know, I could have an unknown type of episodic ataxia, yet the gene hasn't been identified for my particular type. So that could be a possibility. I have, for the most part, I have good days and bad days. I have milder cerebellar symptoms that are pretty persistent, and these symptoms have been seen when I went in to see my neurologist, and he would do a neurological exam. It looks like I do not have ataxia, but I actually do. Unless if I were to have an extreme bad day where, you would be able to notice it. I was put on a medication called exozolamide, and it does decrease the amount of dizzy spells I get and the sickness from it. However, I only believe it helps the dizzy spells and the sickness from my condition. It does not take away my ataxia. I have periods of having balance impairments, despite of being on the medication. And occasionally I have dizzy spells, so it doesn't even take that all away. So I mean, the medication makes it more manageable, but it's always there. It's always gonna be there. So I've had cerebellar atrophy between the years of 2008 to 2017. My last MRI was 2017. And I've had it known to be there since 2008. Before that year, it was unknown as if I had or when I developed the atrophy. But at that year, I was about 14 or 15 years old. So it kind of started out earlier on for me. I believe I was affected, possibly, I can't be 100% certain, but I was possibly born with, you know, having it. Of course, everyone with genetic ataxia is, but the onset varies within different decades of your life. So for me, I was an infant and I was not reaching my milestones on time. So I was late to perform motor tasks such as talking, walking, and all those things. So earlier on, it was noticed that something was a little bit off with me. However, I did not start becoming dizzy until I was about 9 years old. The dizzy spells started. So, you have to have balance and coordination, I believe, to reach your developmental milestones. I don't care what anyone says, because you would have to have balance and coordination to learn how to walk. And ataxia affects speech. You have to have that to learn how to talk, you know what I mean? So, I mean, these things kind of make sense and kind of add together. But I started becoming dizzy at 9 years old. And there has been these subtle signs throughout my life of it gradually getting worse. The dizzy spells got worse. And it was at its worst point when I was like in high school. And then I was really becoming unsteady on my feet and so on. But anyways, I think I'm gonna wrap up this video, and I hope it brought you some insight, and I'll see you next time.